This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
أصيب عشرات من الجنود الإسرائيليين في هجوم صاروخي على قاعدة زيكوم.
Dozens of Israeli soldiers have been injured in a rocket attack on the Israeli army base of Zikum, north of the Gaza Strip. The Jerusalem Brigades, the military wing of the Islamic Jihad, and Salah ad-Din Brigades, the military wing of the Popular Resistance Committees, claim responsibility for the attack. Al Jazeera obtained video recording showing the two missiles being launched towards the Israeli military base under the cover of darkness.
The Israeli Inner Cabinet, headed by the Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, met at the Defense Ministry's headquarters in Tel Aviv, but issued no announcements about how Israel will respond to the Palestinian rocket attack. According to an Israeli source, the attack has brought closer the anticipated wide-scale military operation against Gaza.
ليلة غير هادئة على الإطلاق في قاعدة زيكيم العسكرية.
It was not a calm night in the Israeli military base of Zikim, south of Ashkelon. One Palestinian missile shook the Israeli base and those who were in it. In fact, the entire Israeli military establishment was shaken. An Israeli military spokesman said that dozens of Israeli soldiers who were asleep in their tents during the attack were slightly or moderately injured by flying shrapnel. Some of the soldiers who were transported into hospitals in Ashkelon and Beersheba were physically injured, while others were in a state of panic. The Islamic Jihad and the Popular Resistance Committees declared responsibility for the attack, which has several implications. The two Palestinian factions released a joint statement saying that it was in response to the Israeli crimes committed against the Palestinian people. The Zikim military operation is a turning point in the history of the missile attacks launched by the Palestinian resistance. The resistance has set a new record in precision, range, and effectiveness of missiles launched against difficult targets. However, this operation may trigger a wide-scale Israeli military operation in Gaza, according to an Israeli military commander. Should the Israelis invade Gaza, they would go back on a decision that was reached earlier during an inter-Israeli cabinet meeting. During that meeting, Israeli officials decided to launch precision attacks targeting Palestinian activists as an alternative to launching a wide-scale operation in Gaza. Israel now has a number of pretexts that it can use to justify transforming Gaza into a battlefield.
Well, as we heard, the Hamas defended and even praised the Islamic Jihad's Qassam attacks, but Palestinian leaders aligned with PA Chairman Mahmoud Abbas condemned it. IDA's John Elkins heard this from former PA Minister Dr. Sufyan Abu Zaida.
Do you condemn this type of attack coming out of Gaza?
I think, I know that for you it's important to hear if I condemn or not condemned. I think situation in Gaza should be changed radically. I think people in Gaza have a right to live like everybody, and I think, and I said that before, if you want to hear my answer, I said that before, it should be no more rockets from Gaza to Israel.
Well, joining us now in the studio to discuss the early morning Qassam attack on the Israel Army base in the Negev is Yaakov Katz, military correspondent for the Jerusalem Post. Yaakov, thank you so much for being with us this evening. Is it true that the soldiers were sleeping in tents and completely unprotected against Qassam rocket attack?
Well, it's true that they were sleeping in tents. I wouldn't go as far as to say completely unprotected. About a year ago, there was a similar attack on the same base in the western Negev. And then we also saw a flow of parents come to the gate, demand that their children be released home, that it wasn't safe to serve there. And the IDF began a process of reinforcing security around the base and inside the base for the soldiers. One of the things that they did was put up concrete slabs or walls along the perimeter of the tents to kind of protect them from, but that's more from collateral damage. If a rocket lands nearby, if a rocket lands, strikes the tent itself, those concrete slabs around the tent don't exactly provide any protection.
Yaakov, we've heard what the politicians had to say today about the attack. What is the Army brass saying?
Well, it depends who you ask in the IDF, but we do know that the IDF Southern Command, particularly its head, Major General Yoav Gallant, has been pushing for about a year now for a large-scale operation in Gaza. His thinking is that we can't let what happened in Lebanon with Hezbollah, ignoring it for 6 years, letting it build up, and then going to war, happen with Hamas in the south. And we know that Hamas is building up a military, very strong. And it's better to strike at them now while they're not at their highest or most powerful point, than to strike them later when they will be. So that's his thinking. At the moment, though, there are many other considerations. We know about the peace summit coming up in November, and if Israel goes into Gaza, that'll ruin the chances. There's the consideration of the tension along the northern border with the alleged IAF flyover of last week. We still don't know exactly what happened there, but there is mounting tension between Israel and Syria. And there's concern that if you mass forces in the south, that could be a window of opportunity for Syria to do something along the Golan Heights. So there are a lot of other factors. It's not just stopping Qassam rockets at the moment.
After its stunning victory in the Moroccan legislative elections, the Independent Party confirmed that it remains committed to its coalition with the Democratic Front and the Socialist Union of People's Forces, which came last in these elections. The final results of the legislative elections confirmed that 34 women have won seats in the new parliament. The results also show that 4 ministers and 7 party leaders failed to keep their parliamentary seats.
The Moroccan Independence Party has achieved a stunning victory in the legislative elections. The final results confirm that the party has won 52 parliamentary seats, which are 5 more than the seats won by the rival Islamic Justice and Development Party. Meanwhile, the Socialist Union of People's Forces came last in the parliamentary elections. According to Moroccan Interior Ministry sources, the Socialist Union won 36 seats, which puts it in 5th place.
The result announced by the Census Bureau confirmed that 5,700,000 people, or nearly 37% of registered voters, took part in the 2007 parliamentary elections. Although this figure fell short of our expectations, it is not unusual considering the circumstances.
The election results may overshadow the political map in the country, where the Independence Party has returned in full force to the political spectrum. It didn't only win first place in the elections, but also threw a fatal blow at the Socialist Union of People's Forces.
It
was rather difficult to secure a victory, considering the low turnout of voters. We were hoping that the Independence Party would be among the front-runners, and to our surprise, it came in first. I think that this has to do with our diligent work in the government, as well as our practical agendas and clear political position, which helped us to secure first place in the elections.
Meanwhile, the Islamic Justice and Development Party refused to accept the results of the elections. Amidst disappointment, the Secretary General for the Justice and Development Party cited election irregularities and said that his party was expected to win 50 seats. He added that his party, which enjoys more popular support than its rivals, was able to secure a place on the political spectrum in a record time.
The primary winner of these elections is the Justice and Development Party. The party has more votes and seats in the national list, and its leaders have been successful members of the parliament. Unfortunately, some used money and financial incentives to influence the outcome of the elections. We at the Justice and Development Party fought hard against this phenomenon, which led to a showdown in the voting centers between the Justice Party and the capitalists.
The parliamentary elections in Morocco, which many held high hopes for, have ended in a disappointment to many Moroccan officials due to the low voter turnout. The parliamentary elections of September 7th carried with it three surprising twists: the victory in first place by the Independence Party, the defeat of the Islamic Justice and Development Party, and the boycott of elections by 2/3 of Moroccan voters. The next few hours will satisfy the curiosity of many Moroccans as the identity of their new prime minister is revealed. For Madar program, Salma Fawazi, Abu Dhabi TV, Rabat.
On
the 6th anniversary of 9/11 events and the declaration of the United States-led global war on terror, the question remains, has the war on terror achieved its goals, and is the world safer than before? This question worries American officials, who reiterate that the war on terror has been successful despite the danger of terrorism, which still remains.
6 years after the collapse of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in the business and financial capital of New York, many American officials continue to warn about the possibility that the U.S. may come under attack by al-Qaeda, despite unprecedented security measures that were undertaken in the U.S. after the attacks.
Over the last 6 years, we have made.
Over the last 6 years, we have made some tremendous strides in making this country safer. And in answer to the question I often get asked, it is clear to me that we are much safer than we were prior to September 11th, 2001. It is also clear to me that we have more work to do.
In his testimony before the Homeland Security Committee in the House of Representatives, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Michael Chertoff, said that U.S. interests around the world continue to be in extreme danger. He referred to recent arrests in Denmark and Germany, which demonstrate al-Qaeda's efforts to recruit members and allies in the United States and Western countries in order to carry out new attacks.
Al-Qaeda is planning to attack the homeland. It's likely to continue to focus on prominent political, economic, and infrastructure targets with the goal of producing mass casualties, visually dramatic destruction, and significant economic shocks. And of course, as mentioned by the chairman, the intent is to create fear among our population.
The U.S. wants to continue to confront threats stemming from al-Qaeda and its allies, especially as these organizations change their methods and modernize. This reiterates the need for the U.S. to continually modify its practices, adapt to these changes, and use modern technology to give it an edge over these organizations.
The threat is real, and we must remain vigilant.
In Afghanistan, the place where the September 11th attacks were planned, the Taliban movement, which took a severe blow after these events, has returned and is active in several areas, including the south, east, and the tribal belt areas of Pakistan after the movement was able to regroup its ranks. Bakar Atyan has the details.
Perhaps the Taliban leader Mullah Muhammad Omar never thought that the Taliban movement would be the center of the world's attention. 6 years after the fall of the Taliban regime, its name continues to preoccupy the world.
They did succeed in removing the Taliban regime.
They did succeed in removing the Taliban regime after September 11th. However, its most important members were not killed or arrested.
It appears that the Taliban today is even stronger than in the past after it has regrouped its ranks. In line with Al-Qaeda, the Taliban paid a great deal of attention to the media and used suicide operations to strengthen its presence in Afghanistan. Many observers of Afghan affairs say that the Taliban movement has increased its power in the past 2 years and has become the address of many local armed groups in the area.
You have large areas in southern and eastern Afghanistan where Karzai's government control has retreated. This is true even in the Pakistan tribal belt because the Taliban has expanded into these areas.
In the Kandahar valleys, the Taliban started out as a political movement by students of religious schools. Then the Taliban took over Kabul. The Taliban had asked students not to interfere in politics, but later did the exact opposite. It is not possible to isolate what is known as the Taliban expansion in Afghanistan from the context of the unfolding events in this region. Without a doubt, there are many possible interpretations for what is happening, but in essence, all conflicting parties are motivated by their own interests. Bakr Atwan, Al Arabiya, Islamabad.
Testifying before the U.S. Congress, the top U.S. commander in Iraq, General David Petraeus, said that a premature drawdown of our forces would likely have devastating consequences. Instead, he suggested starting with the withdrawal of 4,000 soldiers by December 2007. According to his report, violence has decreased, but the Iraqi forces have not yet reached to the level where they can control the security situation. We leave you with Fahima Misani.
The American dream that invading Iraq will be easy was diminished soon after the American soldiers were faced with the reality on the ground. Nothing can be done to reverse the course of action that led to this tragedy. American officials smile, hoping to create optimism by focusing more on success and less on setbacks. The report of the U.S. commander in Iraq, General David Petraeus, and Ambassador Ryan Crocker was supposed to evaluate the successes and failures of the American policy in Iraq at the political and military levels. However, it seemed that they were not concerned with the success of creating a democratic country. Rather, they were concerned with the success of showing that Bush's policies in Iraq were not wrong. Perhaps Bush's strategy of increasing the military equipment of U.S. soldiers in Iraq is one of those policies which, according to Petraeus, has caused a significant decrease in violence.
I believe that we will be able to reduce the number of our forces to where they were before the summer without jeopardizing the security gains that we worked so hard to achieve.
Petraeus did not only use a threatening tone, he also accused Iran of encouraging violence in Iraq. He accused Iran of trying to form a militia force similar to Hezbollah to serve Iranian interests, which according to him is counterproductive to the American efforts in Iraq.
I cannot guarantee success in Iraq.
I cannot guarantee success in Iraq, but I believe that it can be achieved. I am certain we will reach results if we intensify our efforts.
Petraeus and Crocker still believe that the dream of achieving victory is still within reach. The Iraqis may share a small part of this success if their army gains the ability to control the security situation in Iraq.
Isn't it an indictment of policy? I'm not asking you for a political judgment on this, but a military assessment of this, because you're a former military man not so very long ago. Isn't it an indictment of the state of readiness of the Iraqi army that local tribespeople and local citizens with guns and ammunition and whatever else, American intelligence, are better able to do the job than the country's national forces?
Well, from what I saw, first-hand witness, it was far worse than that. Not just an indictment of their readiness. I think everyone was saying they're actually capable forces, but they were accusing these forces of kidnapping and detaining local Sunnis, that they couldn't trust them, of executing Sunnis. So they were making the strongest allegations that they could not trust the local Iraqi battalion. And those accusations made by the Sunnis, they weren't countered by the U.S. military guys who were there with me. So it seems as if they don't trust the local Shia battalion.
What do the American forces themselves, who 6 months ago were perhaps being shot at and attacked by these people, make of the fact that they now have arms and are on their side?
It almost seems like a deal with the devil, doesn't it? But they say you have to have reconciliation, you have to learn to work with the other side, and they've seen significant improvement in their peace and stability on the ground by working with the other side, far more than they ever saw by trying to work with the Iraqi army. Of course, you know, I was embedded before with the Iraqi army, and what I saw there was this was an Iraqi battalion, 750 Iraqi members that were in no way ready for war. They were deployed a year before, and out of 750, only 110 showed up, 640 quit and didn't go when they were deployed to Ramadi. They were using child soldiers. I interviewed a 14-year-old whose Jinsia card actually still had his baby picture on it, and yet he was carrying an AK-47 for the Iraqi army. So the army was in shocking conditions in the way they lived and the way they trained. They weren't ready for a fight.
And this is the army, the reality of the army on the ground and the militias on the ground. Josh, thanks very much indeed. That's the picture on the streets of Baghdad and the other cities in and around Iraq. That's one part of the Petraeus report that we didn't necessarily hear about. It's a report that's filled with statistics. It shows a significant drop in civilian deaths in Baghdad over the last 3 months, among other things. But figures on the civilian toll in Iraq, well, they vary widely depending on which reports you follow. Let's take a look at some of them. According to U.S. sources, 165 civilians were murdered in Baghdad in August. But even the normally cautious Iraqi Interior Ministry puts the figure at over 400. The ministry gets its numbers from hospitals and mortuaries across the city. One news agency says over 1,800 people were killed across the whole of Iraq in August, making it the highest death toll this year. Our correspondent James Bays is in Baghdad. He went to see one family living on the front lines of the U.S. security crackdown in Sadr City.
Despite all General Petraeus' talk of progress in Iraq, the American military is still making many mistakes. Some of those are deadly, with innocent civilians paying the price. Ammar Khadim weeps as he recalls the day he lost his family. His father, his mother, and his sister, herself a mother of 4 young children, were killed, he says, by American Marines. When they came to this street, the Americans may have been looking for those they call insurgents and terrorists. But by the time they'd left, an elderly couple and a 30-year-old woman were dead.
When I turned to my mother, she asked me, "Where is your father?" I told her, "He is dead." She screamed and ran to the front gate. His body was just 1 meter in front of the gate. When my mother got there, the Americans opened fire again. My mother was shot dead.
The family live in Sadr City, one of the poorest neighborhoods in Baghdad. Over the last 4 years, the Americans have mounted frequent raids here, looking for armed fighters, supporters of the Shia cleric Muqtada al-Sadr. This is what's left behind after one of those raids, a line of cars mowed down by American armor.
Seeking compensation is useless. The American troops are enemy forces. There's no way they will offer compensation when they came to hurt people. They have no respect for humanity, the civilian population, Islam or Muslims.
Al Jazeera has spoken to other people like the Khadim family who claim their innocent relatives have been killed in American raids. They, though, were too scared to appear on camera. More than 2 months after their relatives were killed, and despite approaching the American military, the Khadim family have still received no apology and no compensation for their loss.
There is a major shopping frenzy before the arrival of the blessed month of Ramadan in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The cost of items has already increased, with an anticipated increase in consumption during Ramadan by an average of 40%.
It appears that the arrival of the blessed month of Ramadan has been transformed into a major financial burden, especially for families with limited incomes in Saudi Arabia and the Arab world in general. The few days before Ramadan have been transformed into a huge and increasingly expensive shopping frenzy. This year, the month of fasting is accompanied by the return to schools, increasing spending to its peak.
Despite some sales being offered at some of the markets, prices are notably higher during the months of Ramadan. This is due to the increased cost of shipping and an increase in wholesale prices from the producing countries.
The higher prices led to more requests for aid from those with limited incomes, such as retirees and low-income earners who do not make more than 2,000 riyals a month. Charity organizations used to restrict their giving to poor citizens and residents only.
Many producers and companies do not put out their products until a very short time before Ramadan. Sale prices were at 50 to 60% off to give incentives to purchase items only 1 or 2 days before the start of Ramadan.
For the basic items that Saudi citizens need for the iftar dinners or the important necessities for Ramadan, these prices are stable. The sales are only for the complementary items.
We have become accustomed to feeling the joy of Ramadan only when we go out 1 or 2 days before Ramadan and see the people and the crowds.
Compared
to the rest of the year, consumption during the month of Ramadan increases by 40%. During Ramadan alone, total spending reaches more than 15 billion riyals, or an average between 2,000 and 3,000 riyals per family of 5. Ramadan this year will be a prelude to next year's, which will be during the summer season, meaning long hot days exacerbated by a rise in consumer prices. Azam Al-Ishdaidi, Al-Hayat, LBC, Jeddah.
Hi, I'm Wendy Hanamura, the station manager here at Link TV, and I'm here to talk to you about something very important. Keeping this show that you're watching, Mosaic, on the air. Now, Mosaic has always enjoyed foundation support, but that foundation support is now over, and we need to raise $200,000 in the next few months to keep this vital program on the air through 2007. So please do your part right now. Go online to linktv.org or give us a call at 1-866-485-8848. That's 1-866-485-8848. Give as generously as you can, please. Why? Because information is power. Information is the lifeblood of a democracy. You know, it's kind of staggering to think that we are now entering the 5th year of this war in Iraq. We've been in Iraq longer than we fought World War II. Mosaic is a window. It's a window into what's happening on the ground in the Middle East. It's a window you wouldn't have if it wasn't on Link TV. I believe that we need Mosaic. If every person in this country watched Mosaic every day, including those people in the White House, how would we make our decisions? How would it alter our destiny? It's an important question. And at a time when the military filters so much of the information about the war, when the corporate media controls so much of what you see, hear, and read, independent media has never been more important. Independent, nonprofit Mosaic has never been more important. So please, do whatever you can, give as much as you can. Consider this, a $400 donation right now pays for 1 broadcast of this vital program. Information is power, and now you have the power to keep this program on the air. Thank you.
Mosaic needs your support. Help us reach our goal to raise $200,000 by the end of the year to keep Mosaic on the air. Pledge your gift today at 1-866-485-8848 or linktv.org. Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/Mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic Video Podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.